It isn't all fun and games when you decide to start a new life overseas, and sometimes it really f***ing sucks. Here are some things that kind of suck about living abroad. Number 1, learning a new language. This is the most obvious challenge when you move to a foreign country, as most of the time there will be a language barrier. It is very difficult at first and can also be extremely frustrating in the beginning. It's usually fun to try to challenge yourself and learn a new language, but it can be mentally exhausting and extremely frustrating sometimes when you're trying to get your point across and you know what you want to say, but you just can't format it and get your words out the way that you want to. This is definitely one of the biggest challenges about moving to a country that's different from your own, but as long as you're willing to try, most of the time there will always be people willing to help you. Number 2, the culture shock and trying to learn the customs of a new country. So this means learning what to do or not to do in the new country that you're living in. Some things that can be considered normal back home may be considered weird or even a little impolite or rude in your new country, and vice versa. Also having to learn the bureaucratic and administrative systems, learning the laws of your new country, not to mention learning how to drive in your new country. And if that country happens to drive on the opposite side of the road as you, then good luck with that as well. That could definitely be a huge learning curve also. Number 3, being far from home if anything goes wrong. So if I had to pick one thing, this would probably be the thing that I think about the most, and probably one of the biggest deterrences I can think of why someone might not want to move to a new country. And this one is heavy on my mind, especially lately with everything that's happening in the world and us being in the middle of a global pandemic. Anything could happen at any time, and God forbid if my family were to get sick or something were to happen, knock on wood, I wouldn't be able to get home fast. It would take me at least 14 hours to get home, and that's if I could find a flight immediately and get on the next flight home right away. I experienced this very recently as my grandfather passed away just a few months ago, and I was unable to go home and be with my family because I live so far away. So that is definitely something to think about before you move abroad, and one of the things I probably dislike the most about being here. Number 4, it can be difficult to make friends that stay. So this is definitely going to be different depending on where you move to, but at least in my experience, it has been difficult not to make friends, but to maintain friendships. The ways that you may normally make friends back home may not always be the same here. I personally found that it was so much easier to make friends in college because everyone was pretty much doing the same thing. We all lived in the same place, we had the same interests, we were all the same age, and it was just kind of a no-brainer. It's so easy to make friends when you're in a situation like that. But making friends as an adult has been much more difficult, and especially in a foreign country on top of that, it's like a completely new world for me. You really have to be active and intentional about making friends because it's not as easy as just walking down the street and seeing someone that you think you might be friends with or bumping into someone at a party. You really have to go out of your way to try to meet people and try to make friends here. This can be a little difficult or maybe awkward for someone who has social anxiety or doesn't really like to put themselves out there. And there are apps you could use to meet people as well, but I wouldn't necessarily recommend that. And this is definitely different if you're a student or something like that, because obviously it's a lot easier to meet people when you're a student and you're around people of the same age as you or doing the same things as you. But I didn't come here as a student, so I didn't know anyone here before I came, so I don't really have the same resources, I guess, as someone maybe who is studying here. Number 5, you have to choose between going home in your free time or going to visit somewhere new. This one's kind of like first world problems, I guess. But living abroad is cool because there's plenty of opportunities for you to travel to new places that you wouldn't normally have the opportunity to go to. But you also then have to choose between going to visit a new place in your spare time or making time to go home and visit your family. This can be even more difficult if you're working here and you only have limited time off during the year, like me. So you have to learn how to make the best out of your vacation time and really prioritize where you want to go and when you'll be able to make time to see your family. You just have to decide which is more important. Number 6, your nationality affects how people treat you. Now, I touched on this a little bit in my last video, 5 reasons why you should move abroad, which if you haven't seen that yet, you should. And while this can be a benefit in some cases, it can also be a downfall. Depending on what country you're coming from and what country you're going to, the way people treat you will vary greatly. A lot of people don't like foreigners being in their country. And depending on the current political situation in your country, some people might have adverse feelings towards you because of that. I cannot express the amount of times I've been asked something about Trump, why I voted for Trump, why our country is the way it is, as if I personally built this country and nominated everyone in office. Usually, for the most part, people are pretty accepting of tourists in their country, but there are sometimes exceptions. Number 7, it's difficult to maintain relationships from home. I hate to say it, I hope I don't sound ridiculous, but the friends you thought you had back home will disappear. It becomes kind of an out of sight, out of mind type thing, and people kind of just stop keeping up with you. This, of course, isn't true for everyone, and thankfully I have had some really good friends who have stayed my good friends and made an effort to keep in contact with me since I've been away. My best friends and I talk very regularly, but that's because we make time to talk to each other. It's not as simple as it used to be where I can just send her a message, ask her if she wants to get dinner, or call her whenever I'm bored or have free time, especially with the 9-hour time difference between us. So we've really had to make an effort to make a schedule and actually make an intentional effort to keep in contact with each other and maintain the friendship. But don't worry about that too much because, of course, the people who want to be in your life will. Number 8, you will never feel completely at home. Of course, no matter what country you go to, you'll meet amazing people who will go out of their way to make sure you feel at home in their country. But subconsciously, you kind of always feel different from people around you and you never feel 100% at home. No matter how much you try to assimilate, no matter how well you know the language, there's still a little feeling in the back of your mind that you're somewhere you don't belong or you're not necessarily one of them. This can definitely change for sure the longer that you stay in a place, the more people you meet, the better you get with the language, the customs, the culture, etc. But at least for me, I can say this is definitely the case in the 1.5 years that I have lived in France so far. Number 9, you will have to adjust to extreme weather conditions. This will obviously depend on where you move to, but you will have to adjust to new types of weather. Me being from California and then living in Arizona for 5 years of my life is used to hot weather. I'm used to having warm weather to literally scorching 120-degree temperatures. Well, Paris was the literal opposite. It rains during the year and most of the winter is gray and cold. I hated this so much when I got there and I rarely left the house during winter because I'm such a baby when it comes to cold and it was just not enjoyable to be freezing all of the time. So hopefully you're more prepared than I am and you did a little bit more research than I did before coming here. Number 10, you will be homesick. Now this is something that is honestly unavoidable. There will be times when you simply feel homesick and you miss friends and family. Back home, the comfort of being in a place that you know well, and sometimes the food. I know all the French people are gonna come for me in the comments. We have the best food, what do you mean? But honestly, no. Sometimes I really just miss things back home that I can't get here. Like bagels, coffee mate creamer, tacos. Oh, don't even get me started on what the French consider to be tacos. Being homesick is bound to happen at some point in your new life abroad, but there are ways to manage, and of course the feeling is only temporary. So that's it for my 10 things that suck about living abroad. You know I am all about positivity on this channel, and I hate to sound like I'm complaining or being negative about living here, but I also think it's important to shed some light on these things and be truthful about my experiences because a lot of people will tell you that everything is great, and that's not always the case. I hope this doesn't deter you from making your decision to move abroad and try your hand at life in a new country, as I still do believe it's one of the best decisions I've ever made and I would 100% do it again if I had the opportunity to start over. Thanks so much for watching, you guys, and I will see you in the next video. Bye!